Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Donald John Trump's grip on the Republican Party reminds me of a Ted Nugent song. I got you in a stranglehold, baby. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. I'm Sam Bushman with all kinds of hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, and it starts now. James Edwards, well-known for the Political Cesspool radio program, well-known author, commentator, dealing with politics and hypocrisy in the 21st century. ThePoliticalCesspool.org is his award-winning broadcast every Saturday night. You can watch it, listen to it live. Oh, watch it. That's not coming just yet. But we're hoping. We're working on it, ladies and gentlemen. James, welcome back to the broadcast, sir.
Sam, it is always great to be with you right after a huge news story. And over the years, that has happened quite a lot between my show and yours. And thank you for the plug. And it certainly happened last night.
Partisan politics seem to be the name of the game. Sad reality, the founders warned us against parties, said it would be the destruction of the nation. And we're seeing inner turmoil in the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. The Republican Party on full display, that's for sure. Thomas Massie, well-known conservative congressman from Kentucky, loses. Yes, indeed, he lost in the primary to Ed Galrine, ladies and gentlemen. Now, understand the primary between Massie and Ed has drawn more than $32 million in spending, making it the most expensive House primary in history. We'll get to that, ladies and gentlemen. It is out of control. Now, Thomas Massie delivered a concession speech already. So, he's not even contesting it, which I find interesting. Usually they're going to claim vote fraud. He said nothing like that. Here's what Thomas Massie has to say, and then we'll break it down.
Listen, I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galrine in Tel Aviv. I did get a call through, though. I have called and conceded the race. We've been honorable the whole time, and we're going to stay that way. Welcome to the most expensive congressional primary ever in the 250-year history of this country. It's not just the most expensive.
All right, there you have it. James Edwards. What do you think of that?
I watched it all. Sam, it didn't quite stick for me. I loved the opening line about Tel Aviv, of course, but it looked like he was almost relieved that it was over. He was telling jokes. He was on his talking points. It seemed like just a normal appearance. I mean, I think he should have been much more angry. I think it's okay to have a righteous anger and to let that be shown. And
James, what if it's behind the scenes, all engineered and by design? Then it'd be happy,
well,
right?
I mean, that's another thing, that he was in on his own defeat. I don't know about that. But, people will – who knows? But to me,
what if Donald and Tom make up later and he gets an ambassadorship somewhere or something,
Well, we'll see. I'll tell you one thing he could do. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I will just say of the concession speech, it was fine. It was conciliatory, as you would expect a concession speech to be. But under the circumstances, and Sam, I just think there are so many layers to this story. This was so much more than just a contested House primary race. As a matter of fact, on Saturday night on my program, right here on this Liberty News Radio Network, Lou Moore and I, who, of course, was Ron Paul's campaign manager and a chief of staff in Washington, D.C. for many years for a Republican congressman out of Washington State, Jack Metcalf. We're going to go an hour with Lou, but I think we're going to do at least 2 hours on this. I think it's that big of a story. There's just so much, and I think, truly Massie should have come out and just talked about how all of these foreign interests were in his district pouring in $20 million to his opponent to get him
the whole
unseated.
thing was $32+ million. They say Thomas spent about a third of it. They spent double what he spent to get him out of office.
And then what are they earning? Like a couple $100,000 a year. Of course,
$175,000 a year or something like that. Plus,
and we know it's all about the power, and not they're not doing it for the money. Of course, they all become millionaires with insider trading and other things. But nevertheless, I didn't hear any of that. I mean, it almost seemed like there was a weight lifted off of him, that it was over. And it just, to me, just the tone and his demeanor didn't quite match the occasion. However, I mean, he certainly has a back card in his pocket. If he wanted to run as a libertarian, which what he is at heart, libertarians do have ballot access in all 50 states. He could absolutely burn the house down in 28 if he decided to run as a third party. I think, unlike most people who run third party, he would have enough to make the difference in these razor thin swing states where you're winning states in the last couple of cycles by thousands of votes, entire states. So he could do that. We'll see. Now
they're saying he lost by about 9 points this time too, though, and that's what money does. And Donald Trump's talked about election fraud, and then hey, they pour outside, including Israeli money, into the race. Is that election fraud, James, in your view?
Well, it's legal. I mean, it's certainly swaying the election. I have so many
Wait a minute,
notes.
Don't you have limits on how much you can put in?
Well, certainly American citizens do. But private
so
corporate
if you're an Israeli, then you can put in as much as you want. If you're from out of the state, you got some PAC, some special privilege, dark money, horse plan, then you can put whatever you want into it. But you and I are restricted. See, to me, that alone is vote fraud. When you look at the money that came into this district and you look at the agenda and who's behind who, and Trump says, I'm going to take him out, and then, hey, Trump's partnering with literally Israeli money, and I don't know, it just seems like vote fraud to me.
Well, I got some numbers on this. I was up till probably 3 a.m. As I said, I just think this is so much more interesting, and there's so much more to it because of who Massie was, because of what he was up against and why. And
we'll get into all those details. Keep going.
I mean, there's just so much. But just with regards to the money that was coming in, I was texting myself different things. So you're catching me the morning after. By Saturday, we're going to have it all sort of laid out in a more coherent fashion. But I've got notes all over the place. But with regards to the money that was coming in, yes, most of it was AIPAC money coming into Galrain. And but of the actual factual voting public of that district. Now, I'm not talking about American citizens who, on their own volition, donated to either of these two candidates nationwide or even throughout the state of Kentucky. But just in CD04, which is Congressional District 4 in Kentucky, where this race was, Thomas Massie had 1,545 donors. No, excuse me, that is statewide, actually. That is not just the district. So that's statewide in Kentucky. That doesn't sound like that much. I mean, 1,500 donors for a very popular congressman in his state and in his district. 1,500 statewide doesn't seem like that much, and maybe it isn't. I don't think it is. Do you know how many Galrain had? How many people from the state of Kentucky donated to Galrain?
Probably not near as many.
70. Yeah. 70. I saw his victory party.
This is what I'm talking about when we talk about election fraud, though. When you're talking about this, District 4, and you've got 1,000 donors to 70 donors, you've got, and if you were to isolate that and see what the vote numbers look like, if you, poll those people, you kind of wonder what that would all look like, James, because I find it very interesting.
I saw footage from Galrain's victory party last night, and there was a smattering of people. I'm talking about less than we pull for any given event by far. I mean, not even nearly that much. Not even nearly as much as what was at the last TPC conference last year. I'm talking about a handful, and it wasn't the top dresser drawer. But 70 people. Now, by the way, that wasn't just something we picked up online. That was from FEC statistics, and that was verified by Grok, if you appreciate his opinion. But but it was a pretty, I did say last week on the show, we were previewing this election last Saturday, and I said Massie was cooked. I am pretty good on predictions, whether I want them to occur or not. We're talking to a guest. A lot of people on the right, especially the online right, thought that Massie was going to pull this out. I didn't. And I didn't think he would lose by 10 points, though. That is interesting. And it just goes to show how much that money can make a difference when this array is concentrated against you. $20 million for a House race. But here is the most interesting takeaways that I'm seeing so far, Sam, is if you want to find a silver lining, if you are a Massie guy, the silver lining is that the future does belong to us. They were able to get all of their forces concentrated against this one candidate in this one race. But what are the future trends? Well, here it is. When you separate voters by age in this race yesterday in Massie's district, of people who voted aged 18 to 29, okay, this is the future, right? 81.5% voted for Massie. 81.5% of voters aged 18 through 29. Of voters 65 plus, your Fox News demographic, 61% for Gal Rain, and they, of course, make up a much bigger slice of the electorate. Future belongs to people like Massie, but right now it's a bitter sting.
Hang tight, Liberty Roundtable Live.
If Planned Parenthood were what they publicly declare themselves to be, they would welcome transparency. We all know why they hide, because we know what they hide. We can confirm federal judges who follow the Constitution rather than reverse engineer their preferred policy outcomes. The truth about abortion is spreading because of advances in medical imaging, because of brave journalists, tireless activists, compassionate doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals. The rising generation of young Americans is the most pro-life in decades because they know too. And one day soon, we will reaffirm our nation's principles in their dignified fullness and avow once again that all men are created equal. All are entitled to life.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
I find this fascinating, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the Thomas Massie loss. Thomas Massie delivers concession speech, but the race drew unprecedented outside money. And I kind of look at that and I say, is Israel putting a bunch of money into our elections? Election fraud? Now they say, hey, you know what? Outside money doesn't really mean fraud. But you and I can only spend a certain amount of money. You know, hey, to make sure that there's, not fraud going on. They limit you and I on what we can spend. But the Israelis have no limits. But the anti-Massie folks from outside the district have no limits. The big Trump PACs have no limits. I find that very fascinating because we're going to say, that's not fraud, James. That's okay. And I guess my question is, if you can buy elections with outside money, $20+ million against a single congressman in a given state. You look at that and you go, how is that not fraud? Because if they spend that kind of money, well, then they say, well, the voters voted for the other guy. Yeah, they voted for Ed, Sam. And my question is, did they really? What did they know? What? It's very interesting how that money translates into what? And when he gets beat by 10 points, what they want to do is say it was such a landslide he can't even challenge it, is the point there. But does that mean it's a really above reproach, really above challenge, James? What do you say?
The money definitely made a difference in this. I mean, it was the difference. I mean, this was a guy, nobody knew Ed Galrain's name. He was the most uncharismatic candidate I've ever seen, maybe second to Bob Dole. When he ran for president in '96, and Buchanan was the second place finisher. But the Republicans have a history of putting these resurrected cadavers up and pouring money into them to prop them up. And in this case, they were able to unseat a popular congressman. $20 million does a lot in a concentrated congressional district in northern Kentucky, apparently. And again, yeah, I mean, you talk about PAC money. We know about this. We know how this works. There are no limits. The limit for...
There's not even really any ability through some of these PACs and some of these dark money channels to really trace what money from whom either,
well,
right?
Even if you knew where it was coming from, it wouldn't really matter. Anybody can donate to these things pretty much.
Even the communist Chinese, even North
citizens.
Korea, even Russia.
Well, I guess they got to be at least dual citizens in the case of some of these people that were donating through AIPAC. Well, and listen, I mean, and this is no conspiracy at all. AIPAC has taken credit, publicly taken credit on their social media accounts and elsewhere for being the determining factor in this race. They said we got Massie. I mean, so they know who made the difference.
So there you go. You get this vendetta from Donald against Massie. You take out one of the most constitutional congressmen in the country because, hey, there's a battle over what? Disagreements over spending bills, foreign policies, debates about, releasing those documents. But Thomas Massie addressed this, by the way, in his speech. It's at 8:30, Mark. Michael, let's play this one.
Vietnam, and you will make it better. And I am hopeful.
Okay, I lost the audio, so I don't know what happened there. Okay, here we go.
I mean, I think people, if you're not tired of politics, if you're not jaded, if you're not cynical, and so many people are, the people that want somebody that'll go along to get along. I've never heard of that strategy, but that seems to be what the voters want. That's what's been promised to them, but not the young voters. I mean, we stirred up something. There is a yearning in this country for somebody who will vote for principles over party.
Not when there's that much outside influence.
You all don't like bullies, and you don't tolerate them, and I love you for it. You also... Yeah. They couldn't listen.
All right, go ahead and go to the 8:30 mark.
Hey.
All right, so basically during his whole speech, you can stop that.
If I'd known this speech was going to be this fun to give, I would have come out 15.
All right, let's go ahead and get to the 8:30 mark. 8 minutes, 30 seconds in. But in the meantime, though, so they really shouted Massie, Massie, Massie. They were a very supportive crowd, even though, but it's very interesting to me that they'd be that supportive, that he'd be that cheerful at his losing party. He's been in Congress for 15 years, since like 2012, kind of a thing. And so it's very, very interesting. Now here's what he had to say.
15 minutes sooner. Look, for 14 years, those SOBs in Washington tried to buy my vote. They couldn't buy it. Why did the race get so expensive? Because they decided to buy the seat. And it got real expensive for them. Look, they used a lot of dirty tricks, but we stayed the course. We didn't bend a knee. We didn't throw a foul ball. We didn't do any of those things. We didn't kneecap anybody. We had lots of opportunities to try a lot of stuff like that, and we never did it. We ran a clean race.
All right, James, you want to reply to that? Go ahead and stop that. James,
hey.
What do you say?
And there's...
Well, I'm sure that he did run a clean race if that's the point he wants to focus on. I wish he would have won. I don't think that this is the terrible, calamitous outcome that a lot of people are saying that it is. Again, Thomas Massie will probably never hold elected office again. Well, or will he? I mean, he's never going to be president, but he could certainly get enough of a single-digit support in a general election to throw the race if he wanted to do that. And with the issue of the war in Iran and Israel, your garden variety Democrat is better on that issue than your garden variety Republican. I hate to say that. But if that is your issue, then you're going to be looking at that. But I say again, if this race had been held maybe even just 4 years from now, I think Thomas Massie wins, because even with the $20 million, mostly from AIPAC and people associated with AIPAC, that they poured into this astroturfed, propped-up candidate, Ed Gallarain, it did not penetrate the voters of the future. The 18 to 19-year-old demographic, 81.5% of them yesterday in this race voted for Massie. Of voters aged 30 to 44, 70.7% voted for Massie. 45 through 64, it was a 50-50 split, 49.4 for Massie, 50.6 for Gallarain, and then the determining factor, because, again, they still represent the biggest part of the voting electorate, is your boomers, 65 plus, 38.9% for Massie, 61.1% for Gallarain. And how that happened was, of course, unlike people who are watching us right now, Sam, and listening to us on the radio, who get their information from alternative news, people have to understand that not everybody gets all of their news from Twitter like the young right does. And for these people who watch Fox News, there was a constant drumbeat of Trump surrogates who were on there to browbeat Massie and to pump up this other guy, and all of the ads. The Fox News voter broke hard. Senior citizens broke hard for Gallarain for whatever reason you would have to ask them, but they were compelled through. And I think one of the reasons is because
the propaganda of the fake news. That's why.
Well, you know why they do? Because they were born in the last generation where people have a trusting nature. They believe what they're told for the most part. They do. That's why they're so susceptible to scammers. They grew up in an America that doesn't exist anymore, where people were trustworthy. And so when they see these things, especially coming from the president, they, even though they would have voted for Massie otherwise, they got enough of them, and that's what turned the race. But I'll tell you, the word on the street with what happened here was out of D.C., is that a couple of years ago, I guess it was 25, so it was just last year. Seems like a lifetime ago. But Massie already saw the storm clouds beginning to brew, and he trimmed his sails a little bit and voted for one of Trump's spending bills, with the quid pro quo being that Trump would call off the Israeli attack dogs from pouring money into this race. And Trump reneged on that. Massie voted for whatever the spending bill was at the time. It escapes me. Trump reneged, and they went all in to remove Massie anyway.
Well, that's how Trump operates, right?
And then that's when, yes, it is. And that is when Massie became so recalcitrant and was going all in. He basically said, and quite rightly, what do I have to lose now? He went all in on voting against the big, beautiful bill, going for broke on Epstein, and, of course, the war. Now, some of that stuff, like the war, is principled. Some of it was him punching back. And, well, anyway, this is how it ended. But that is, I think, a believable chain of events that led us from where we were.
So I got a question for you now. Who would you say is the most constitutional congressman we've got now? I mean, Thomas Massie was as close to Ron Paul as you can get. Mm-hmm. Who do we have next?
Well, they've gotten rid of two of the best. They've gotten rid of Marjorie Taylor Greene. They've gotten rid of Thomas Massie. Before that, of course, Steve King, our friend. Of the congressmen that are left, Paul Gosar.
Paul Gosar's one of them for sure. What about, what's his name? Clay Roy? What's his name?
Chip Roy.
Chip Roy, yeah. Chip Roy. What about Chip?
There's some other good ones. I mean, you'd have to get into insider Republican politics. Andy Ogles out of Tennessee, very good on a lot of things. If you're going to look for any reason to have disagreement with somebody, you'll always find it. But there are some good Republicans, but not any with the national clout and profile that Massie or Greene had. They're gone.
So the real question is, do we have any belief in the Republican Party? I say the answer is yes, because even though they're far from perfect, they're way better than the Democrats, who are doing everything they can to destroy this country. That's my humble opinion, to which I'm entitled. Thanks for being alongside with the ride. James Edwards, thepoliticalcesspool.org. I'm Sam Bushman. God save the Republic of the United States of America.